Ryan, if you're ready, we might as well get started. We've got a quorum.
Scott's on his way over here.
He's on his way? Okay, I was gonna say, he told me he was gonna be there as well, so did he tell you where he is?
Just text me. I'll ask him.
I mean, Gary, it's up to you, if you wanna go ahead and start.
Well, we've got a quorum.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't want to keep people waiting too long. We'll go ahead and get going. How about that?
Are you ready for the broadcast? Ready, sir. All right.
Okay, we'll call to order this meeting of the Valley Center Planning and Zoning Board for Tuesday, September 26th. For those who are willing and able, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Feels odd having everybody sitting on one side.
Just in 2 minutes.
We're tilting.
Roll call, please.
Gary Hansen.
Here.
Paul Springer. Steve Conway.
Here.
Brian Shelton. Berger.
Here.
Scott Phillips. Golden Wilson.
Here.
Okay, assuming everybody's had a chance to review the agenda for tonight's meeting, are there any questions, comments, additions? If not, I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Draft minutes of the August 22nd meeting. Got a chance to review those. Any additions, questions? Seeing none, I move that we approve the draft minutes of the August 22nd meeting.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any communications, Ryan? Okay, we have one public hearing, which is review of SD 2023-01, application of Lou Rebelli pursuant to City Code 1604, who is petitioning for approval of a preliminary plat for land located southeast of the intersection of 93rd Street South and Meridian. Ryan, it's yours.
Well, good evening, everyone. As you have before you in the staff report, there have been a few changes from when the packet was sent on Friday, and I will address those. But again, in the agenda packet, you do have the staff report as well as the preliminary plat documents. First, I'll start with the name. We went through another name change, and so instead of this being called Hornet Hideaway, it will be called Harvest Place. So this will be the Harvest Place subdivision. This will be noted and amended on the final plat documents. But again, this is for property between 93rd Street and Meridian, and then the middle school on the south side of this property. This is going to be a significant investment in the community. We're very excited to see it move forward. It does include the city-owned property in which the new Aquatic and Rec Center will be built. So that property is going to be part of the plat, and the city fully supports the developer and the applicant through the platting process. The end use of this plat will be a mix of mixed use. There will be commercial, a few large commercial lots on the Meridian side, and then the remaining lots will be residential, both duplexes and single family. And so as noted in the staff report, again, tonight's meeting is just to review the preliminary plat. At the October board meeting, we will review the final plat and then a rezoning application. This property, all of this property is currently zoned RR1, which is our designation for a suburban residential district. So the applicant, along with the final plat, will be then requesting a rezoning. And so the final plat and the rezoning application will be reviewed in October. But tonight we are just reviewing the preliminary plat. There have been a few additional street name changes, which may or may not be on this one, and on the documentation that you received on Friday in the agenda packet. But I will note that we did have some heavy community involvement in the street names. So we reached out to our school district, and each of the schools submitted names, potential street names, and each of the schools are represented on this map with the street names. So we're very excited to see that community involvement through our students in the local school district naming streets. So we have names such as Stinger Avenue, Stinger Court, Sunflower Drive, Chance Avenue, Emporia and Northwind do align with existing streets, so those names are familiar. We have Scholar Drive, Valley Court, and then Hornet Lane and a couple of Hornet Courts. So again, very fun and unique names for this subdivision, definitely hearkening to the fact that this subdivision will be built between the high school and the middle school. So there will be a lot of foot traffic among students that could potentially be traversing throughout this subdivision once it's fully built. But again, the applicant is requesting approval of the preliminary plat tonight. With us this evening, we do have Jake Vasha with SEH, who is the engineer of record for this project. He, along with myself, will be more than happy to answer any questions that the board has at this time regarding the preliminary plat. And I would just note under the staff recommendation that the city staff review team is recommending approval of this preliminary plat contingent on the completion and subsequent approval by the city staff review team of a traffic impact study, obviously with the high school being on the north side of this and where Sunflower Drive is proposed to be. City staff is requesting a traffic impact study to make sure that this traffic, along with its close proximity to Meridian, is going to flow well, especially during peak traffic hours in conjunction with the school times. So we are recommending approval, but contingent upon the completion approval of a traffic impact study, as well as final approval of the drainage report, which is being reviewed at this time. But again, city staff feels confident that SEH will be able to complete these and we'll be able to finish our review prior to the October 25th board meeting. But again, we are reviewing these at this time, but we do still recommend approval before this body tonight.
Thank you, Ryan. I do have a question, but I think we'll open up the public hearing at 7:07.
Okay.
Was there any, and sorry if you said this, was there any feedback from notifications?
Yes, that is noted in the staff report, but it has not changed from that report. Only received one inquiry, and they just wanted to see a copy of the preliminary plat, which was provided to this individual, but there has been no submitted or verbal protest to the preliminary plat.
Okay, thank you. I guess I
Thank
could
you.
have read
No,
that.
thank you for asking. Yes, public notice. The public notice was published in the newspaper as well as sent to the surrounding property owners.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any initial questions for Ryan? Is there anybody with the applicant or the agent who'd like to say anything about this? Jake?
Good evening. I'm Jake Basha with SEH. So as you recall, I was here last month. And so we did have some things that tweaked from last month, but more or less we were pretty close to ready last month and had to get everything submitted and reviewed. So that's kind of what's been happening this last month. So we've got some things tweaked. But in general, the development is as presented last month. The site presents a pretty good challenge just from the way that it is, the topography of the site. It's incredibly flat. There is very little fall across the site. So that's why we introduced the retention ponds to generate the dirt that allows us to create the drops in elevation from one side to another. Grading plan, if you want to go to that, Brent, that's a ways down. Then you can kind of see the difference in elevation that we have across the site. We also have some drainage coming from the northwest of our site that we're accounting for. It comes to us on the site through the 93rd Street ditch on the south side. So that continues to the east and goes into the, what's that? It's on the Prelim plat, probably that
21.
next one, maybe. So we have some existing drainage that we show that comes to us. So we're accounting for that. There's an existing culvert, as you can see there. We call out impact 0.5. So that culvert can't take all that drainage. So our retention ponds are also designed to take that additional drainage. The retention ponds, there's 3 of them. They act as one large pond because they will all be connected hydraulically. So that allows us to basically store all that rainwater in those retention ponds and release it slowly on the south end of the project. Future Emporia Avenue will carry that drainage to the south. There is a walking path that goes along Emporia Avenue from the south end of the site to the north end of the site. as Ryan mentioned, we'd have potentially have a lot of pedestrian activity along this area for the golf course, including both schools. There's also a walking path along the outside of the 3 ponds. So good pedestrian connectivity there. We have several permits we need to still accomplish to get this site permitted. We have a water rights permit that we have already submitted for that allows us to store the water in the retention ponds. We have a floodplain fill permit that we need to obtain through Department of Water Resources for the floodplain that is mapped on the south side of the site. And then we also have a 408 permit for through the Corps of Engineers for the basically the impacts to the levee on the east side of the site. In general, the impacts are minimal. We aren't cutting anywhere near the levee. Most of the site is fill except for the ponds. And those ponds are more than 300 feet away from the levee, which is what the Corps requires. So at this point, we feel like we're in a good position to obtain all of those permits. As Ryan mentioned, the site contains single-family lots as well as duplexes. In general, the east half of the site is duplexes, and sort of the northwest quadrant of the site is single-family. And then we have C2 along Meridian, and then the city's property is just south of Northwind and just west of Emporia. So that large parcel there.
Thank you, Jake.
Yep.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know we talked about quite a bit of that before, so.
If there's
Any
other
questions for Jake? Go ahead.
So Jake, on the proposed C2 area, just for reference, just because I don't know if paper does it justice, what kind of, or how big is that? Is that relatively similar to the strip mall property size that's down here? What kind of commercial buildings are we expecting to go in there?
Yeah, so mostly small retail, I'll say. So smaller restaurants, C-stores, things like that. Maybe smaller office space as well. Those lots are 300 and some deep. So that's a good sized lot for a smaller retail or office building, bank, something like that.
Okay.
Yep. And I think C2 is the only other commercial zoning that you have that isn't the downtown zoning. So
Right.
essentially, I believe there's a lot of different uses that are allowed within that C2. I will note that within that C2, you can kind of see that that line on the west side. That's our gas line. That's, I believe, some sort of national gas line. So it's very restrictive what we can do that footprint. So that's going to restrict some of those lots a little bit. Not your guess.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Jake.
Yep.
Anybody else from the public who'd like to speak on this item? Now's your opportunity. Yes, sir. If you'd come to the podium and give us your name and address, that would be great.
A couple of questions. My name is Steve Brown, and we just moved here to Valley Center about a year ago, and it's just been a blessing. We love this area and this community and everything. My questions are lighting. I'll give you a little bit of my background. I'm a retired lieutenant from Northern California for a large thing, and I watched our small little town go from 22,000 to 95,000 in 10 years. And without the proper planning, the infrastructure took a big hit. Police and fire resources took a big hit. And our property backs up to the proposed plat. And one of my concerns would be, is the water that's going to be stored there have any kind of impact on my well that's on my property, which is on the other side of the culvert there? And what kind of lighting is going to be used to illuminate the area? I mean, we already deal with the lights from the football stadium that shine into our backyard, which, you know what, we can deal with that. That's, a good thing. I'm all for that. But the quality of life is important to us too. And so the lighting issue, how it's going to impact our, like I said, my well there on the property. If they're going to be storing water, is that going to affect my well? And then overall, just, infrastructure, the Meridian Road, the increase in traffic. And one thing I'm not sure of, is there going to be an egress and ingress from 93rd Street, or is it going to all be off of Meridian?
So before we figure out how we best want to answer those questions, would you mind giving us your address just to make sure we've got it?
9201 Hedge Apple.
Thank you. I know you explained kind of where you're at.
Okay.
Ryan, do you want to try to answer these or do you want to talk to him?
Jake and I'll tag team it.
Okay, however you want to do it. I would imagine you can answer all of them.
Some of them definitely. And I would like to note that I did just speak to Mr. Brown. He did email me on Friday. However, there was one letter. It was one letter off, and so I did not receive the email. But he said he is going to forward that to me, so I will add that to the record. And do want to thank him for reaching out to me. And again, I did not receive that email because it was off. There was one letter difference.
Did
so
you still apologize for not responding, Ryan?
What?
I'm kidding. Go on.
I try. Okay, so we'll start with lighting. So any commercial development by zoning code is required to have cutoff lighting at the property line. And as you know, that we would review that lighting when it comes time for the site plan review. So again, in that commercially designated area, the C2 area, before any building construction commences, we will go through the site plan review process. Lighting will be looked at as part of the process to make sure that that lighting is cut off at the property line and doesn't spill over onto residential adjacent property. With Mr. Brown's property being on the other side of the floodway, it's going to be a distance, but again, it should not impact his property as well as the properties that are included in the platted area that will be residential, because it should be cut off at the property line. So that's about lighting. Infrastructure.
What about
Yes,
street
go ahead.
lighting though? Is there going to be street lighting? I assume you'd probably want to know about that too. And I would assume that you're
Street
probably
lights,
going to
okay.
follow kind of,
How tall are they going to be? What kind of, are they going to be lights? Are they going to be,
And I'll answer these other questions to my ability and then turn it over to Jake. So in regards to the infrastructure, so as noted on the plat, Brent, if you can go back to that to show the connections on 93rd. Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. Yep, that property right there is where Mr. Brown lives. So there, as shown here on the preliminary plat, there are proposed to be two entrances off of 93rd, moving from east to west. So you see what's here. This is Emporia. And then to the west is Sunflower. And again, we are doing we have requested a traffic impact study to make sure that traffic will flow, again, especially during the peak hours of school, to make sure that there will be a safe movement of both pedestrians and vehicular traffic in this area. And I would defer to Mr. Vasha for the other questions. Unless the board has any questions for me at this time.
no, you're good.
Okay, thank you.
So as far as lighting goes, obviously Evergy handles this area, so it would be their design on what the street lighting would be. The developer would work with them on what type of lighting that is, and obviously that would go through the city as well. So I guess I couldn't say specifically how tall the lights are or what types of lights. That kind of happens after the fact, or sorry, not after the fact, but after our infrastructure design is more or less complete. We engage with Evergy in the city to get that lighting design.
But that's just, I might ask a quick question. Is that up to the developer, Ryan, or does the city have a policy on street lighting?
I would defer to Mr. Eggleston, our Public Works Director. Rodney?
We can get that information back to him. I don't mean to get caught up here. I was just curious.
Good evening. Happy Tuesday evening. Thanks for spending it with us. Actually, that's dictated by the energy giant of Evergy. And so that juggernaut actually designs and decides what lights go where. The only thing that we can do is request them, and then they review it, and then they tell us, and they just do whatever they wish. And so that's kind of how the lighting goes. That's why we don't have a lot of lights here in Valley Center. And it's like driving in a third world country in some of our major corridors and arterial streets. They charge roughly $25.98 per light per month. That then gets passed on to all of us, not ratepayers, but citizens of Valley Center through property taxes.
That's not unlike what's in Wichita. There's 27,000 lights in Wichita that
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
are
your
charged the
bills.
same way. I was
I
just
mean,
curious.
I hate our bills, and I could.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I did, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, did want to address also Meridian Avenue. That question got brought up. I don't know if that was answered.
About
And so Meridian Avenue, we have been exploring and trying to find good federal grants. We've actually applied for a few to turn Meridian from 93rd Street all the way south to 7th Street, which is right by the intermediate school. We've been trying to find grants to turn that into a 4-lane road. Of course, you know, the further you go south, there's houses and some of those property acquisitions that would not be easy. And so we've really focused on where the crosswalk or 7th is, and then north, trying to turn that into a 4-lane road. Of course, you know, for about 15 minutes every morning and afternoon, that area becomes really congested. And so it's about roughly estimated $11 to $15 million for that stretch. And so, you know, for a 15-minute window, it's hard to justify on our taxpayers. And so we have been applying for grants to try to come up with road improvements as well as sidewalks on both sides. And so that is underway.
Thank you. I think the other question was, how does the detention ponds might impact?
So the ponds, so I guess I'll start with our water rights permit that we applied for. So the permit that we applied for is only for stormwater runoff to store. So there are no wells that we are drilling or having drilled to feed these ponds. They are only fed by stormwater and the runoff that I talked about previously. And for us to obtain this permit, our ponds or what we hold water at has to be a certain level above the water table. So our bottom of pond will be above the water table that we've had borings done for. And that is a part of the permit that we have to get through Department of Water Resources. So I don't feel that it would impact any wells in the area because we are not taking any water out of the ground and we are not contaminating any water table in the ground based on the guidelines given to us by Division of Water Resources.
Thank you. Do you think that catches about everything? Did we miss anything?
Yeah, I just got one other. Yes.
Thank you very much.
It is like I said, I have a history. I was an operational lieutenant for a small town in Northern California. I watched it grow from 22,000 to 95,000 in about 10 years. And they made a lot of improvements and a lot of developments first and tried to catch up with resources later, and they never did. And I watched our violent crime, including homicides, rape, robbery, double in that time. Still low, but again, it doubled. Auto burglaries, and it took us a while, probably, I don't know if they're even still caught up yet, but it took a while of the impact of the additional residents, of the police and the fire to catch up to the point where it was overwhelming at times. And so my other question would be, do we have any plans for additional resources, additional personnel, additional equipment And the traffic issues are more than 15 minutes. And they happen because there's after school functions. Sometimes there's the football games, there's other athletic things that go on and stuff and everything. So it's impacted. And during that time when school is letting out, it's pretty dangerous. There's a lot of kids riding bikes on the sidewalks and they're cutting across intersections. And, has all this been planned out as far as, traffic safety signals, additional bike lanes or, something to help for that. And I was noticing I think it was Emporia and Sunflower onto 93rd there, cars making left-hand turns without the proper, semaphores or type of, traffic control devices. It's going to be dangerous for the high school kids and the foot traffic. So that's just some of my other concerns. And of course, the additional noise, the additional light and that kind of stuff. So anyway, thank you guys.
Thank you. And is there anybody else, or you want to address some of that?
Yes, can I address
Go
some
ahead,
of those?
please. Yeah.
And so, yes, as you've seen throughout the entire proposed subdivision, now Harvest Place, thanks to, I believe, Wheatland came up with that name. And so there's walking trails and the connectivity is actually, tremendous in this entire area. Now, as far as the crosswalks and those things across our major corridors, we do have a great relationship with USD 262. We've cost shared a ton of pedestrian crosswalk, the LED solar ones that you press a button and they flash. And so we are implementing those across the district. And so this is something that once these homes get built, that we would explore those opportunities. I know, unfortunately, everything to the west of Meridian, on Northwind, Suncourt, Southwind, there's no sidewalks. So there's no sidewalks in those neighborhoods. And so right now they just dump into the street. And so, yeah, those crosswalks are not the best situated ones. And we're well aware of that. Yes, during the football games and some of those events, there's parking, there's double parking, triple parking sometimes in areas of the community. Hopefully with the rec commission and the rec center going in and adding, almost 200 stalls, that helps alleviate that, at least off of Meridian. So then we don't have kids jetting out in between vehicles. Just to remind you, in 2023, we again were labeled the safest city in all of Kansas. And so according to SafeWise, we were the safest city once again. We have had that title 2 out of the 3 years. The year in between, I believe we were second or third. And so that's something that, we hold very valuable and a top priority the mayor and council do when it comes to public safety. Currently we have 17 certified officers that protect us every day, as well as just recently hired additional firefighters. So we have 3 on every shift. We have 3 so we can pull out our engine ourselves. And so we actually do have a tremendous amount of great planning for this growth and development. So I wanted to assure you that. Also, too, we're building a little thing called a water treatment plant. Right now, we do buy our water from Wichita, which has been a great partnership for many, many years. And now it's time for us as our own city to have our own water treatment plant. Again, want to remind you that will be online in 2026, 2027, depending upon our negotiations with the city of Wichita. We're also in the process of securing more water rights, so then we can limit how much we do purchase from Wichita moving forward, so we are in control of our own. In addition to the water plant, we are looking at municipalizing our electric. And so then our mayor and council and potentially a utility board would be in control of our own electrical distribution system. And so again, looking at not just today, not just 5, 10, 15, but actually 20, 50 years out and forecasting those things. And so great planning has been done by your Ryan Schrack, our community development director, and Rodney Eggleston, our public works director, as well as the mayor and council. And happy to answer any more questions.
Thank you, Brent. Any questions?
Brent, I actually have
Please.
one for you. This may be out of the scope of the plat, but just since we were kind of talking about it, the Meridian expansion you discussed or applying for grants for, is there any consideration in there for a stoplight or a roundabout or anything at 93rd and Meridian, especially if we continue to develop that area?
Not necessarily at 93rd and Meridian. I will tell you between the area I discussed, there's 2 different roundabouts, if not 3. There might be 3, I can't remember. And so I've slept since we developed that one. And so there are a few roundabouts to help with the congestion in certain areas with those intersections. So we absolutely, once we get to that point and we really explore the 93rd, because that is a county intersection. And so that is actually in Sedgwick County, where the other ones are in Valley Center. And so we'll explore that once that opportunity presents itself.
Makes sense. Thank you.
But of course, with the potential development, off of 93rd Street on the southwest side along interurban, that area just recently sold as well that you'll be seeing come up. With that gravel road now, with round, it's just not prepped for it at the current time.
Thank you, Brent. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anybody else in the public who'd like to speak on this item? If not, it's 7:32 and we'll close the public hearing. I will say, I've been in Valley Center for 17 years and been on this board for the better part of that. And I do think the city and the elected officials have done a really, really good job of providing the necessary infrastructure, providing support services as the city has grown, because we've all seen it grow, and especially with people coming into the school district. So I think there's a lot of really good things that have happened. The community's been fortunate to receive what I think is a considerable share of federal grants, which has been great and really helps with offset some of the major infrastructure costs. So anyway, any other discussions, thoughts?
I do have one more for Jake. In regards to the flood plan that you mentioned, I know there's going to be a lot of regrading that's going on. After the regrading is done, are there going to be any homes that remain in a floodplain, in any sort of flood danger?
Yep, absolutely not. So that's the intent of a lot of the grading that has to be done. So with this site being adjacent to a levee, we also have to account for the worst case scenario where the levee is full of water and we have rainwater on our site. So that makes us look at our own kind of local floodplain, I'll call it. So if a 100-year event happens within the area that drains on our site and our site, we have to be able to retain that water and not have it raise above any finished floor elevations. So that was also one of the challenges with this site as well. So yes, that has been looked at. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other comments, based on city staff recommendations, public comments, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board, I make a motion to approve SD 2023-01.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here tonight. Ryan, any old or unfinished business?
No.
New business?
Nope.
No staff reports?
The only item to mention will be that our next board meeting, and I had sent an email prior to this, but we will be meeting in October on October 25th. That is a Wednesday. So this is just to accommodate some scheduling. So again, please mark your calendars for October 25th, same time, 7 p.m. Here at City Hall, but it will be on the 25th on a Wednesday instead of a Tuesday. And so if you can go ahead and mark that in your calendars to make sure we do have a quorum, as we will be reviewing 4 applications. So it'll be quite the night for us, but looking forward to it.
I hope
And then
I hope that's not to accommodate the IT guy for the meeting, is it?
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
No.
You don't have to answer
And then
that.
just to remind the board that following the adjournment of this meeting, we will reconvene as the Stormwater Citizens Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other items from planning commissioners? If not, I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Board.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Now, for the first time, we will call to order this meeting of the Stormwater Citizens Advisory Committee. And Brian, Rodney, whoever's going to take it from here, I guess.
Gary, you can still call the roll call.
Should we still, okay, I just noticed that. So roll call, please.
Gary Jansen.
Yes.
Paul Spranger. Steve Conway.
Here.
Brian Shelton. Rick Schellenberger.
Here.
Scott Phillips.
Here.
Dalton Wilson.
Okay, so having said that, Rodney, before you go, we do have sorry, I'm a little slow, Ryan.
Okay.
If you've had a chance to review the agenda for this first meeting, are there any questions, comments? Seeing none, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
A motion second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Now we're ready, I think, right?
You're good. Take it away.
Okay. Want to start off, my name's Rodney Eggleston, I'm the Public Works Director, and I wanted to start by thanking all of you for being willing to sit on this committee. Little bit of history on where we came, how we came to this committee. The NPDES, or National Pollution Detection and Elimination System permit that the city holds, was renewed in 2019. In 2019, there was a few slight changes to that permit, which added point systems to the BMPs, or best management practices, that you pick out of that permit. This plan, what the plan is that I sent you, it comprises of different BMPs, or best management practices, i.e. goals that the city has chosen. One, to obtain the required point systems for the permit so we can meet our permit demands. And two, that we feel do the best job of meeting goals, helping to reduce total suspended solids, pollutions, as the stormwater leaves our system and goes into the waters of the United States. One of those BMPs, these BMPs have to address what they call 6 minimum control measures. And if you'll bear with me, those measures are public education and outreach, public involvement and participation, illicit discharge detection and elimination, construction site stormwater runoff control, post-construction stormwater management program, or pollution prevention, good housekeeping for municipal operations, and total maximum daily load. This committee falls under the public involvement and participation, i.e. its goal is to get a cross-sectional view of our plan, get some advisement, some feedback on the BMPs that we've chosen to initiate, i.e. maybe we need to change them. If we do we need to make changes? This is your committee. This is why we sent you to review that plan. If you have questions for me tonight that I might be able to answer, as you look through it, if you come up with more questions, the committee is required to meet a minimum of twice a year to meet our goal, our permit goals, i.e. that does not mean we can't meet more often. When Mr. Schrack and I got together to work on forming this committee, I thank him very much for suggesting that we come to you folks and see if you would be willing to sit. It works out very, very well. We can plan these meetings right after the planning and zoning board meetings. Now we can also schedule another meeting if need be, if felt need be, and we can do that all by itself. That's perfectly fine. But we are required to meet a minimum of 2 times a year.
What do you need from us, Rodney? And I appreciate the way you described that, and I understand that. I mean, I live in this world a lot, in which don't understand what's required. But are you looking for anything you want us to review? I mean, I've read through this, and I assume everybody else did. You got particulars that you want? Probably not going to get a lot of technical advice from this group. But
If you have any questions about what you read, if there's something that you don't understand, or because we want some feedback. And it's real hard to give feedback if you don't understand what you're reading. So probably this very first meeting was simply designed to give you all an idea of why we formed, what your function is. And if you haven't had a chance to read through the plan before tonight, we will be meeting again. We suggest to meet again at the next planning and zoning board meeting when would that, is that scheduled already?
October 25th.
October 25th to immediately follow. So if you didn't have time to read through it and develop questions, we can certainly save questions till next time. If you have any tonight, that's what I'm here for. It's very, very hard to offer feedback if you really don't fully understand what you're reading. If there's a goal in there that you don't fully understand, and I may be able to answer it tonight, I'll do my best. If I can, I'll write it down. I will go find an answer for you and I'll bring it back, or I'll email you. But really, we would like to have, this is your committee.
Well,
This is,
we have the plan and what is covered, what is being done. I guess the KPI, as far as how we are actually approaching it, how well are we performing, things like that, the guidelines. Do we need to make adjustments in that? Probably, if anything, is probably something we would be looking at, I would think.
that's a good question, sir. And
You
to give you some idea that we just recently completed a stormwater inspection, i.e. audit through KDHE, just in the last few weeks. We got a very, very positive response from that. There were actually zero violation. We haven't got the full report back yet. There were a few minor suggestions. Most of them were in our own house at the Public Works Building, i.e. Mr. Jansen can probably attest that's usually where it starts. So there's some few things we need to address there. But as far as our construction sites, we're in good order. All of our structural and non-structural BMPs, i.e. flood controls, our wetland parks. Again, as we were discussing those ponds, those retention ponds within this new development, i.e. that's a stormwater structural BMP, as well as it controls quantity as well as quality. It lets total solid settle out into the bottom of the pond before it comes over the weirs and goes out into the drainage system. It also holds back water, and it controls the velocity of the water leaving the system. When stormwater first started being thought about, it was, hey, all this water is running off my house, out of my streets. It's all in front. I just want to get rid of it. I want it out in front of me. I want it to go away. Let the next guy worry about it. Well, what happened was all these towns were doing that. All this water came together. Eventually, it hit one town so fast and so hard it started washing things away. So stormwater is a lot more than just getting rid of it. So they've learned very, very much on how to retain it, how to use it, utilize it for good watering, feed, and then also don't send all that stuff that you're running off your roof or off your driveway or everything out in the street and send it out into the waters of the United States. Mr. Jansen may attest, as you increase nutrient levels in water, these are some of the things that cause algae growth and these blue-green algae and things like that. So as we increase these nutrient levels in these waters, this is some of the things that cause these things to happen in our recreational reservoirs. And it's an inconvenience. It's something that nobody likes. So this is what we're really needing. Yes, we are meeting our goal, i.e. we are checking our box and making our points on our permit. But I would really, really like for this to turn into something more. If we can get some citizen feedback and input. This is your community.
And I think that's part of it is, a better understanding of the influent, the effluent of what's going on, our stormwater, what is going into our systems, how it's being handled. Are we getting overtaxed in some areas? Do we need to have better discharge areas? Do we need to, we've had improvements on Ford Street for better effluent discharges. Do we need to look at some other things too with there's some parts of the city we still have problems with.
Oh, yeah. I mean, as we affectionately like to say, it is called Valley Center. And, like Mr. Clark likes to say, we technically live on a pool table. There is no drop. There is no grade in this town. With the new Meridians project, part of that is going to have increased storm drain, underground storm. That's the only way you can create grade. You have to put concrete pipe underground and you have to slant it. That's the only way you can really create grade. The city has come a long, long way. They've done a great job with with the stormwater controls, with the flood controls, the improvements they made right on front here with the meridians down here in the Ramsey area. This development coming up that you just discussed, there was a lot of design going into that to help with a lot of the flooding in the north part of town, to help alleviate some of that. Yes, do we need to improve? This is what we're kind of looking at. Are there problem areas? Do you know there's problem areas? Bring this to our attention. Can we solve it right away? No, but we can get it on the books and we can start looking at it. You sent me an email, asked me about the map, i.e., Mr. Clark, could you bring up our GIS, please? Public facing stormwater. Thank you. So in the past, we just implemented a new GIS system. In the past, our publicly facing stormwater map was somewhat limited. It didn't depict our whole system as well as we would like. This new system does a much better job of showing our pipes, our open drains, our inlets, our outfalls. And as I said to you, there were some updates that need to be done. You could bring up the storm there. Thank you, sir. And so the one thing I did reach out, he didn't get the updates done. Our stormwater system is basically right next to the Arkansas River, so it runs down. So there's 2 points where our actual stormwater system outfalls into the Arkansas River. So there's a point where the Arkansas River enters our system up north of town. It's just north of the Redbud District. And then it exits our system down basically at the 69th Street Bridge on the west side of Meridian. On there, we have 2 sample points. So we do have to do, as we're adjacent to a river, we have to do what's called a wet weather monitoring program. We have to do samples 4 times a year. They want us to do them. They would prefer them to be done in the spring and in the summer. We do the best we can. You have to wait to have a rainfall or a snowfall or melt that equals one quarter of an inch. As you know, sometimes we have some pretty dry years. It's actually difficult to get a quarter of an inch of rain at one time. So we have to do that. And our sampling points, one would be out here on West Main on the 81st Street Bridge. We grab a grab sample there. And then that's our entrance point that we grab a grab sample. And then down on the 69th Street Bridge, we'll do a grab sample. Reason we don't go clear up to the actual entry point, it's just there's very little input from our system by the time it gets to the 81st Street Bridge, and it's a much safer place for our employees to take that sample and a lot less risk of falling in or getting hurt.
And this is to comply with the NEPDES permit?
Absolutely, yes, sir. And so, and again, in those permits, what they do is they'll list out a plethora of different options for BMPs and best management practices you can pick from. And so, one, we need to meet our permit goals, our points, and then 2, try to find ones that's going to have the best positive impact on our system. So no, we don't, almost nobody picks them all. Otherwise you'd be inundated and you never do anything else. Mr. Jansen could probably attest to that.
So I just have one quick question, and I might talk to you about some of this other stuff offline. The
Absolutely.
new commercial developments, do you have any in Valley Center that have any on-site permanent BMPs, hydrodynamic separators, anything like that they've got to maintain?
Most of our developments basically are retention or detention.
Well, what I'm
ponds.
talking about is if you look in Wichita, commercial developments, anything over 1 acre site
Yes.
is required to have permanent on-site BMP. And what that means is they've got to have some type of device. They don't have the space for a pond. They've got to have some type of device that provides the level of cleaning necessary before it discharges. The only reason why I ask, and I was trying to think, Brent, nobody from Valley Center's on the Stormwater Advisory Board for the Sedgwick County Stormwater Advisory. I'll talk to you about this later. The Sedgwick County and the City of Wichita were able to develop what's called an off-site BMP program. that was approved by KDHE, and it's this wonderful thing, and it allows commercial developments to buy into, to pay for no-till farming in the upper reaches of the Ark River, and it's proven that it does much more for siltation throughout the river basin than it does. And what it does is it allows commercial developments to pay cash one time and not have to maintain that permanent BMP. I think it's one of the best things we've done in a long time. I'll get with you later on that. It is a tremendous value for commercial development.
There again,
And so what
there
I-
again is a benefit of this committee because you know,
Yeah, yeah. It's
we
something
try
that-
to double team this and become as much of an expert as we can on this.
Sure, yeah.
And we're
Like
learning all
us.
the time, and anything I can learn from you.
Yeah.
We did have to create a stormwater design manual, i.e. it was patterned after Sedgwick County's manual.
Great place to start.
There are verbiage in there, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Jensen, that some of these developments, if they're adjacent to an already structural BMP or a pumping station or a large detention facility such as our Ford Street or a Fifth Street detention facility that actually can pump, that we can detain and then pump out to the big ditch, the floodway, then they can actually list that as they're using that for
Sure.
their control mechanism. So if they're within so many distance from that, they can actually use that and claim that as their detention system. Most of our developments in this town are water quality, sedimentation, retention, or detention ponds. Most of them is that.
And that makes sense. I have one last quick question on what have you done over time for public education? Is there something in water bills or something on?
Most of it, yes. We do two educational flyers within the water bills twice a year, 2,800 copies apiece. We send my administrative assistant, Katie Lechner. She does an excellent job. She puts together PowerPoint. Once a year, we send it out to HOAs to educate them on illicit discharge detection, how to detect it, how to report it. One of the other goals that we have to do this year is we have to pick out 4 different groups throughout the city, industrial, business, residential, educational, and then we put together an educational piece for them and present it to them, i.e. we use our stormwater webpage. We'll use social media. Mr. Clark loves social media.
Sure. And I guess I've seen some of that. I was just curious. I was just wondering, this is a very minor deal in the grand scheme of things. I run around, I'm not a runner, but I run around. And man, I see a lot of grass in the streets some days.
Well, yeah, and that
And
is a
you
big
know,
monster.
that's not, but it's all part of it.
That's a huge monster to control and another.
I get it. It's hard. That's fine.
Yeah, my administrative assistant made a very good suggestion and it was during our inspection. And we may try to implement this and she showed some interest. We may try to address the elementary schools, talk to them. You want to get a good group that'll tell their mom and dads when they're doing something wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Go educate some 7
Yeah.
and 8-year-olds.
That's my
And
example.
then when
I
they
was
say
thinking
mom and dad
Right,
throwing
right.
grass in the street or washing their car in the driveway, they're going to tell them about it.
Yeah.
Mom, we
I agree.
learned today you're not supposed to do that. And this is why. So we may implement that. That's a good get the word out
Yeah.
technique.
That was all I had. Sorry. Anybody else got any questions, thoughts? So we'll do this again on the 25th.
Yes.
I think it's a good start.
And, and don't limit this just to the plan. I mean, if you get questions from your neighbors or whatever, if it has to do with the fee or anything like that, I mean, all I ask is do me the courtesy, shoot me an email, shoot Ryan an email with your questions, and then we would have a chance to research them, try to answer your questions at the next meeting. Whatever, bring them to us. This is what this is supposed to be for.
Okay.
Glad we could be of help.
Think anybody?
No, again, I really appreciate you guys being able to sit on this
I
committee.
think that if anybody's got complaints and problems with it, just contact Ryan.
Or myself.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate it.
But I like your strategy.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rodney. This has been good. Good. Good
so,
start.
yes.
We're happy to help. Anybody got anything else? Anything else for us, Ryan, on this? I assume us taking on this second committee pays about as well as the first one. I just thought I'd ask. All right, if nothing else, I would move that we adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very
everyone.
much.
Have a good night.